these, you know those little gaskets? Gussets?
I don't know what we're talking about. Gaskets.
Those little rubber linings.
Definitely quite a big difference between a gasket and a gusset. Don't get those wrong.
No.
Welcome to the third episode of the Boat Geeks podcast, except it's not the Boat Geeks podcast because it turns out there are some boat geeks in America already doing that. Yeah. So we are now the Boat Nuts. Welcome to the third episode of Boat Nuts. This is Boat Nut number one, Hugo Andre, editor of Motorboat and Yachting magazine, and I am Boat Nut number two, Alex Smith, deputy editor. Now the basic principle, as I'm sure you know by now, is we come down, jump on board a boat and chat about a few things all related to boats. So Hugo, where are we and what are we on today?
So we're down at Premier Swanwick Marina again on a very lovely looking Sunseeker 75 sport yacht. Now this is a brand spanking new boat. It's a stock boat belonging to Sunseeker Southampton and it is just over 4 million quid's worth, but seemed like a slightly more interesting place to film it than back in the office.
Now, as in previous weeks, we're going to talk about three things. That's a boat, a product, and an issue. The boat today we're going to talk about is the Viknes 10, which we're both quite excited about, I think.
Lovely looking bit of kit.
Yeah, the product is going to be Fowlies, and we both got pretty extensive experience in that, so there's lots to be said. And the issue of the day is going to be powered water sports equipment.
Absolutely.
Is there a point to it?
Well, we'll soon find out, but there's certainly plenty of it about. You rarely find a motorboat without some kind of toy on board these days.
True, true. So let's jump on board and get started.
The first thing we're going to talk about then today is a boat, and I'm pretty fond of this. I spent a good 4 days at the Dusseldorf Boat Show, saw dozens of boats, some very special boats, but for me, and maybe it's partly because I didn't know of the brand before then, this was one of the most impressive boats of the entire show, and it's called the Viknes 10. And I know you took a look at that as well, didn't you, Hugo?
I did, and it's rare that we find a boat that we don't really know about.
Yeah.
And it slightly came out of nowhere, but it has been a brand in Norway. I think it's built in Norway, isn't it?
That's right, built in Bergen. And that in itself is an interesting thing. A Norwegian brand, built in Norway, built in Bergen. And for me, when you've got brands, premium brands like Windy and Marex building in Eastern Europe, that kind of takes the shine off it a little bit, in the same way it would if I was looking to buy a Ferrari, for instance, and it was built in China. You know, I want a Ferrari to be Italian. I want to feel like I'm buying something special, and that just takes a little bit of the shine off it for me. So the fact that these Vikneses are built in Bergen at the factory where they've always been built by the people who have always built them, I think is a great starting point.
I do. I like that kind of thoroughbred thing. That said, I'm not sure that a Windy built in Poland is any different to a Windy built in Norway. I think they do such a good job there now.
Oh, they do. There's don't get me wrong, there's no downgrade in terms of quality. It's a real premium product, and it's as good as it always was. But it's a psychological thing. It's in my mind.
Yeah, I get that.
So, look, like I say, a good start.
Yeah.
And so is the tagline, right? Viknes, built for the North Sea, essentially.
Is that the tagline?
It's something along those lines. You'd think I would have written it down, wouldn't you? It's along those lines. Somebody will check for me. I don't doubt one of our viewers will spot whether I made a mistake. They certainly did do the first podcast, and in fact the second one, but that's the nature of podcasts, isn't it?
It is. You're always going to get something slightly wrong.
Exactly. Your mouth outruns your intelligence. It's quite a common
problem for both of us.
Yeah, but they're essentially semi-displacement boats, diesel engines, single shaft, very straightforward, and built tough to put up with seas in Northern Europe. And again, it comes back to the fact that they're built in Norway by Norwegian people, and they get some pretty snotty seas up there. So that, again, is a good starting point. But really, it's about the intelligence and the value of the deck layouts and the attention to detail that I really want to pinpoint.
Yeah, so good, isn't it? Everywhere you look, you think, wouldn't it be handy? Oh, there is one.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And you can start anywhere on this boat and be impressed. But let's start with the cockpit, okay? Yeah. Now, a nice big cockpit, quite a beamy boat, 11'7" on a 34'9" boat is substantial. And you've got a lovely big square cockpit there with seating all round, with a roof structure that comes way aft. And as standard, in that roof structure, you get a big sunroof. And because, as I say, it's a Northern European boat, it's a double-layered sunroof. So you've got that Alcantara-style sort of soft-touch leather on the inside and waterproof membrane on the outside.
But crucially, it's fabric, so it does all concertina up, so you get a really big opening above. Because one of the joys of being on a boat is being outside. So although it's great to have that protection, when the sun does come out, you want to make the most of it. You don't want to be hemmed in.
Exactly that. And that brings me very neatly, thanks Hugo, to the fact that actually, as standard, just like that sunroof, you get an external helm. And not just well, you don't have a joystick on this boat, it's a single engine, but not just a throttle. You've got the wheel there, you've got the proportional bound stern thrusters, that is an option. But because it's such a fully featured helm, because it comes as standard, and because it's back there in the cockpit, it means that when you've got the sun shining and all your mates are out there at the back end, you can stand out there, helm the boat from there, and actually feel like you're part of the party.
I know, I've never seen that on a leisure boat. I've seen it on sort of fishing boats and things.
Yeah.
But it actually, the only thing I wonder about is, do you still get a decent view? Because effectively you're looking through the wheelhouse or along the side deck, because you're stood right in front of a glass bulkhead.
Don't you dare say negative things about my Viknes 10. I won't have it. Well, it's a reverse screen, isn't it? Slightly inverted. So
the windscreen.
It's, nice and steep. So there is good visibility all the way through, and it's the wider of the two side decks, of course, the starboard side deck. So decent visibility up there.
Design.
Yeah, exactly. Just to maximise the volume in that saloon, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there's a couple of other things in that cockpit. We got the sunroof and the outdoor helm. There's the side gate on the starboard side, of course.
Yeah.
Again, standard. There's easy storage because they hinge from the front, these bench seats, so that you don't actually foul one cushion on another. It's a one-handed job.
I saw that. There's nothing more boring than having to pop cushions on it. You know, there's wretched little poppers that you have to get your thumbs under and get it just right and try and squeeze down.
Exactly.
So much simpler if the cushion comes up with the whole seat.
You're so right. And you know, you've owned boats, you own a boat now. It's the small things that really, really aggravate. And they exponentially, they just get worse and worse the longer you own it. So that's great. And so is the fact that the starboard bulwark there, you open that little hatch, the little cabinet in there, you've got hooks for your lines. You've also got a couple of vents as well. So if you spec the diesel heating, you can dry your lines on passage and pull them out lovely and dry at the other side. It's just so simple.
Or life jackets, I think you suggested as well. What a great place for them. Because when it comes to lines, there are also, isn't it 4 separate lockers that I saw?
That's right.
Everywhere. So at each corner of the boat, 2 in the stern on the bathing platform.
That's right.
Right at the bow, 2 at the front, either side of the anchor locker.
Yeah.
So there's exactly where it should be. There is a locker for each and every line and each and every fender.
And every fender. But the one thing, and I won't be negative, but I'll be a bit mischievous. I said it when I reviewed the boat at the show, but why on earth, on a boat that's so clear thinking, do you have the reservoir for the screen washer as far away from the screen as you can possibly manage? It's under the stern bench.
I saw you making a bit of a fuss about that, but then to me, the thinking behind that is you don't want to be walking through the interior with a great sloppy bucket or jug of fluid, of screen washer fluid, because if you spill it, you're going to ruin the interior.
Well, you've got to skip a side door there, haven't you? So it's not difficult.
Yeah,
you just pop in through there,
but it makes sense to me.
And
why is that a bad thing, being far away from there? It doesn't matter that it's far away.
Well, I just don't see why you'd use 6 miles of pipes when you could use 12 inches. There's always a bit of space under the dash somewhere in there, isn't there?
Yeah, but do you want to be pouring liquid down the back of your dashboard?
I do, and I'd make a point of it. I would make a point of it if I was buying a Viknes 10.
Fair enough.
But before we get embroiled in that, let's talk about those canvases around the back end as well, because they're amazing, aren't they?
And that is possibly even better than the Mareks, I think, because that's the other one that we always rave on about. It's got these clever little lockers in the kind of roof supports where you can tuck the covers away. This one, rather than tucking them on the side pillars, they're on the same kind of curtain track, so they just pull around, but they all roll up at the back and tuck into a little recess on the hardtop, don't they? Is that right?
Exactly right. And it means, because they're on individual tracks, they're independently operable. It means that these things, when you roll them up, you're not screwing up those window panels and impoverishing your view, which is always what happens when you just bundle them into those little cabinets you're talking about and then slam the door shut and just get it out of sight. And then I watched the guy do it at the show. You roll them into position, roll them down, and then just use a little tensioner through a button. And in seconds, it's so taut.
It's literally really enclose the whole thing in about 30 seconds. And if you have to do it, I mean, to be fair, the Mareks are still way better than having to take them all off and roll them up and pack them away in a locker. Yeah. But I thought that was absolute genius, how quickly you can transfer that cockpit to an enclosed area to an open one. Yeah, wasn't it superb? Genius. And to be honest, the ingenuity, although it's maybe not quite as profitable from a practical perspective, but when you get to the bow, the ingenuity of those bow seats is just great. Never seen it before. Yeah. So just to sort of explain how they work, normally bow seats, they're either sort of permanently fixed in which case it sort of compromises your view from the helm. Yeah. or you have sunbeds, great, but not really terribly comfortable to lie on a sunbed and read a book. These have two little like director's chairs that are under a locker. You pull the locker up, and as the locker comes up, it effectively sort of unfolds the chair.
Yeah.
And you've got two perfect little built-in director's chairs for sitting on the bow, having a drink, reading a book.
Built from weatherproof material, so you don't actually have to remove your cushions. It's all drained under there, so it just look after itself. And between the two chairs, you've got a little platform for your drinks, haven't you, and your nibbles.
And then, of course, when you fold them away, you've got nothing in front of you to spoil your view. So kind of win-win on both sides. It
really is. I should point out that if that level of segue is not really for you, you want the more traditional sort of raised island sunbed covered with cushions, they can do that as well. But actually,
you're not been doing much sunbathing in the North Sea, though. Let's face it.
No, you're not going to. But I'd be wherever I happen to live, I'll be tempted to have one of these things. And again, attention to detail. Simple thing. That kind of, it's not quite a raised island sunbed, is it? Because it's used differently. But still, the fiberglass there, you'll see it's got tread machined into it right the way across for grip, and also just to minimise glare at the helm, and you see that attention to detail in the saloon as well.
It's all those little things. It's a bit like a sort of Swiss Army knife, or one of those sort of fishing gilets that people have with pockets for everything, every little camera or fly or hook or whatever it may be. Everywhere you think, I just need a little locker there, or I just need a non-reflective piece there, they've just got there ahead of you. They really sorted it.
So you look for the compromise. You go back down that port side deck, the narrow raised one, where they try to factor in a bit of volume and expand the volume in the saloon as well. And though it's narrow, it's really, really secure feeling. They got the tow rail, they got the elevated peripheral rails, and they got a one-piece rail that they make in-house, incidentally. The steelwork is all in-house. One-piece rail that runs all the way down the roof structure, all the way aft. So it must be, what's the length of this boat? Did it say 35 foot? Yeah. So it must be a 25-foot rail. All the way to the transom, and it's one piece. So there's no, on some boats you run in aft on one of these sketchy side decks, and all of a sudden the rail disappears into the roof structure, and you've got to wait another 12 inches before it comes back up, by which time you're sort of staggering around like a drunkard thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go overboard. Well, none of that here. Love it. And then you get into the saloon. And I'm a big fan of the way they've done the dinette on the port side as well, because it's raised, which means, well, lots of storage. It also means lots of volume down below. It also means a view forward when you're on a passage. And instead of just using an up-down table so you can turn it into a occasional bed, which you can do, by the way.
Surely you can't sleep any more than you already can in the cabins.
Yeah, well, you've got three cabins down below, haven't we? But
that's the astonishing thing.
To sleep 5 people. So you could, in principle, if you spec this dinette telescopic leg, sleep 7 people. But what they had on the showboat was not a leg. It was a cabinet holding up the table. And inside that cabinet, all your branded drinks, glasses, your cups, your cutlery, your little plates, all these little bits and bobs, space for a couple of bottles of wine.
And they're the bits that you always like sort of showing off, don't you? You go, oh, look, as it happens, I have got a drinks cabinet here, and here are 2 little glasses all carefully arranged exactly where they should be.
Yes, exactly.
Always impresses them.
And, there's not a huge amount of space for the galley on the starboard side, but it runs fore and aft. It doesn't really get in the way of the helm seat. And I must mention the helm seat as well, because that's made apparently by Helly Hansen for Viknes.
Is it?
I wasn't aware they made seats of any kind.
Never seen it before.
It is. And I've sat in some comfy helm seats. I've been on a pontoon boat, I have. I've sat on armchair style.
That's a ridiculous helm seat.
Yeah, massive things, big enough for 3 people. But this helm seat is about as comfortable as any I've ever experienced. It's just superb.
Have you seen the size of the helm seats behind you? Those don't look too shabby.
They don't. But I've got a dodgy old man's back. I like a bit of lumber. And this is one of those rare seats where it actually has enough fore and aft travel that you can sit in touch with the control points at the dash, but still have proper lumbar support.
And a helm door and a sunroof.
Yeah,
2 other absolutely vital things on a boat like that.
Well, exactly. You get another 2 sunroofs above the helm, don't you?
Yeah.
As standard, plus there's space for solar panels.
Because it's all about the ventilation. If you're in a pilot house boat like that, you want to have the fresh air, you want to have the light, and having a side door and a sunroof it's the holy grail.
It is. Now, in response to the video I put up on YouTube, on the MBY channel, we had a few people saying, brilliant looking boat, love that, but not sure about those cabins. Now, I think most of the reason for that was the fact that there are no hull windows. So any windows you get are actually above the rubbing strake, and there's a decent bit of elevation above the rubbing strake, particularly as you move forward.
Which works in that forward cabin, doesn't it? Because you've got the sort of eye level windows.
Exactly that.
effectively.
But I think mostly people were concerned by the single aft cabin, the one beneath the back end of the dinette.
That's always going to be the kind of third cabin, isn't it? It's not often you're going to be cruising with 5 people.
No, not often.
But when you do, it's lovely to have an overspill cabin.
But actually, they
don't
talked about...
mind that that's a little bit compromised as the overspill. A lot of the time, you're just going to be using it for storing your kit.
Well, it's true. They did talk to me about the potential for having a skipper on board if you're particularly nervous, but really at 35 foot, a boat like that, you're never going to do it, are you?
No.
So it is. It's a man draw. Is what it is, that space. But if you want to use it, or child drawer, if you want to use it as a cabin, and this is important, I think, because they said there's no option for windows in the hull sides or in the structure facing into the saloon, just to brighten it up. But I just don't believe that, because in that same factory where they build this boat, they also build their sister brand, Skilso, and there's a Skilso 35 Panorama, same hull.
Yeah.
And do you know what that has?
Hull windows.
Hull windows. So I can guarantee... Well, I can't guarantee, but I can.
In your head,
If you are about to sign on the dotted line for a Viknes 10 and you make it a serious point, a condition that they put some windows in these cabins, I am pretty convinced they'll be able to do something for you, because it's made on the same production line.
Alex told me I could have windows.
Yeah. Don't take me at my word, but it certainly seems like there's potential for it.
Yeah.
And as for the cabins, I mean, like I say, able to sleep 5 people. There's only one bathroom, but that's adequate, isn't it?
I guess so, yeah. And again, most of the time, it's probably going to be 4 of you at most.
Exactly.
And it is only 35 feet. This is the thing you have to keep reminding yourself.
You do.
It is only 35 feet. And the fact that you've got 3 perfectly viable cabins, I mean, they may not be super luxurious, but they're perfectly comfortable. And most of the time, you only ever use them for sleeping at night. You don't need acres of space. And
I'm totally with you. And I don't want a flybridge, but if I did, well, it's interesting that Skilso 35 Panorama, well, the Panorama is the non-fly version. There is a fly version available on that. That only adds about 5% to the price. And like I say, same hull, same production line, similar concept, but slightly differently organised. So there is potential. Sort of
traditional windscreen, isn't it, rather than the reverse angle?
In all honesty, I'm not such a fan of that boat. I wouldn't be quite so excited. No, I'm not quite so excited by the Skilso as I am by the Viknes.
I agree. I quite like the kind of slightly adventure-y, trawler yachty sort of style of it.
It just feels fat and voluminous and muscular and lovely.
Yeah.
But of course, that can translate into a boat that's a bit pedestrian to drive. As I say,
well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we haven't tested it at sea yet. You've got a test coming up.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks I'm going to Oslo to test that out, and the Skilso incidentally. So that'd be interesting to see them side by side. But this boat at the show, in fact, actually, any Viknes 10, it basically comes with a single Yanmar diesel, either a 370 or a 440 on a straight shaft. So very simple. And actually, while I talk about the engine, which incidentally get you between sort of 25 and 28 knots, as I say,
Okay, so it's pretty quick.
Not a speed machine,
is that
but
semi-displacement, or is that full plane?
Yeah, semi-displacement, they tell me.
For
it is, isn't it?
a semi-plane boat.
But what I really like there in the engine bay is the fact they've got a little purpose-built bulkhead sort of wrapping around the engine a little bit, so that you can use that space down there for a bit of extra storage without actually clattering your baggage, your gear into the engine itself. So they've just thought so hard about it. And then, of course...
do you think the fact that because it's only available as a single, isn't it? You can't get a twin.
No, I don't think you can.
You see, that for some people will just rule it out. Some people just can't get their heads around only having one engine if they're going serious cruising. I'm totally I'm fine with it. And I think the benefits in terms of fuel efficiency and servicing costs and space in the engine room, because if you only have one, you just have more space to move around it. But it does mean, obviously, if that engine does have a problem, you're a little bit knackered.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways around it, aren't there, these days?
Oars?
Yeah, oars. I was thinking more a little portable outboard of some description.
Yeah,
but if you're on a big, long passage, a tiny little electric thing to whack on the back is arguably not quite.
But then, ironically, you think, well, all these Scandinavians are totally cool with one engine, and they live in one of the sort of harshest marine environments you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly.
So why is it that so-and-so who's tootling around in a corner of the Mediterranean, or just from port to port on the south coast of the UK, why you feel the need for 2 engines when one is
it's a funny cultural thing. I don't want to keep harping on about pontoon boats, but we had an argument about that, and that's a funny cultural thing, because people overlook the practicalities, the simple realities, the benefits, the merits that are glaring of these things. because they've just got it in their minds just from birth somehow that this is the way we do things. This is
And once a diesel engine, if it starts, it tends to keep going, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It's pretty rare, and if it is a problem, it tends not to be the engine. It tends to be the electrics or the fuel, which might just as easily knock out both your engines if you had to anyway.
Exactly that. So we reach a stage with this boat where we clearly love it. And there were actually some previous owners there who had moved on to, bigger things like a Prestige 520. I think there's a Swedish couple I talk to quite often. And they talked about their previous Viknes boats with such tremendous fondness. Not a single negative vibe did I detect. And then you come to the most important thing, I guess, which is price. And let me tell you, this boat we saw there, it was standard package from 258 grand excluding tax. But it's so high spec.
Do you think you can actually
nothing.
Get it for that much, or by the time I know it comes with a decent amount of spec, but is that a realistic?
It really is. I mean, as I was going around the boat with the guys, talking to them about the spec, pretty much the only thing that I remember being non-standard were the proportional bound stern thrusters.
Which would be handy, to be fair, on a single engine shaft drive boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reversing, backing up
in
a single engine shaft drive boat is not an easy thing without a thruster to help you.
So not. I mean, I never really get to park a boat because I no longer own one. I go out and test a boat. So I'm kind of out of practice. I'll be crashing that up a pontoon every single time I brought it back
it's the prop walk that's always the issue when you're going astern in a single shaft drive boat. Whichever way the propeller's going, it just kicks you sideways. And you'll find it turns brilliantly in one direction going astern, and it just won't turn at all in the other direction.
Yeah, so you need the
I think you do.
thrusters.
Well, you definitely need a bow thruster, and you probably need a stern thruster if you don't want to have a heart attack every time you try and berth in a strong
who
crosswind.
needs that? You don't want to be a hero.
No,
Make it easy. I'll take
yeah.
that all day long.
Yeah.
So that, I think, the Viknes 10, remember the name Viknes, it's a superb boat, really impressive, amazing value, does a huge amount for the money and for the size.
And just arriving in the UK, isn't it? They've got a UK dealer in Poole, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, who was that?
I think it's Fine Design, Nick Weston Edwards.
Yeah, good guys.
Yeah.
Good guys. So I'm delighted it's in the UK, and I can't wait to test it in a couple of weeks.
I expect we'll be seeing a few afloat before too long.
Next up, we are going to move on to products. And today we're talking about Fowlies.
Indeed. Wet weather gear, Fowlies, oilies, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that you probably got a proper pair of old school oilskins still sitting in your
spent
cupboards.
Most of my childhood in a yellow oilskins of various different hand-me-downs from older brothers and cousins, and you just don't see them around so much these days, do you?
No, keep all the water out, but, breathability was not a strength.
No, you did melt, but it kept me slim.
Yeah. So, I mean, presumably you've got your favourite brands of Fowlies.
Well, I've got a lot of different brands. I'm afraid to say I'm a little bit of an obsessive. I just like wet weather kit. And I'm not totally sort of settled on any one brand. I like different bits of kit from different brands for all kinds of different reasons.
Well, let's start with the basics then.
Yeah.
Because I find, I don't want to criticise it too roundly at the very outset, but I find the industry of foul weather gear for marine, I find it's almost a bit like the cosmetics industry, where they come up with sort of quasi-scientific buzzwords to inflate prices and just have the buying public marvelling at their cleverness. Whereas the simple reality is that you need breathability so that your sweat doesn't get trapped, and you need a barrier to protect you from the external elements from rain and seawater. And there's a balance to be struck between waterproofing and breathability, isn't there, for the most part?
And also sort of comfort, because particularly on a motorboat, I mean, let's face it, we're not quite the same as the yachties who go out in a Force 8 and water careering across the boat, get absolutely soaked and gritting your teeth. Miserable time, obviously. I mean, they pretend to like it, utterly miserable. Yeah. But on a motorboat, most of the time, you have some kind of shelter, at very least a windscreen. Increasingly now, you'll have a hard top, even on an open boat. And let's face it, if you're on something like this, I mean, you don't need much more than a T-shirt, really, do you? You might pop outside to do the lines from time to time.
Yeah, it is important.
But there's a balance between comfort, wearability.
And as with buying a boat, if you're looking to buy your wet weather gear, you'd need to be really genuinely honest about how you intend to use that. Because you can overbuy. You can just...
True.
Parboil yourself inside something that's for offshore use when you're just fannying about in marinas like we are
today. You barely
today.
see over the collar half the time.
Exactly. So
And
you
just
do
don't
need to take inshore, coastal and offshore.
Yeah.
And
And also,
standards.
you want to be able to wear it around a marina or into a town, or maybe taking the dog for a walk without looking like a complete prune. And, there's nothing worth it. It's a bit like, those guys who wear dry robes to go shopping in Sainsbury's. It's an entire Facebook group about it. Have you seen that?
No, I can't bear that, because all they're doing, they're going to town to tell you implicitly, oh, I like to go sea swimming.
Exactly.
Because I can have
As
it.
it
I'm
is,
so cool.
I'm actually just shopping in Aldi for a couple of pints of milk, but I've
Yeah,
put on my
that's
dry
right.
robe
That's
just to
right.
let everyone know.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the same about,
Yeah.
if you go into your Musto HPX with a collar up here and a hood flapping about, and it's so enormous, it sort of comes down to your knees and you can barely move.
I know.
think you just don't need that. Fair enough if you're going on an ocean race, but if you're just tooling around in your Axopar, you don't need something quite that heavy.
No,
duty.
you don't. You need something that works for the conditions. But at the same time, and I'm not a fellow, as you can see from the way I dress, who cares a great deal about the way he comes across. But at the same time, there is something to be said for wearing marine specific foulies on the water to have the right branding
Yeah,
and have the
yeah.
right look. Because I have some non-marine specific stuff that I've occasionally taken to marinas or on boats. Good quality kit for climbing or hiking or whatever. And I've just
Not
felt...
the way you just drop that in there. By the way, I have got quite a cool lifestyle. A bit of climbing, here we go. Yeah.
And did I mention I had crushed avocado on toast for breakfast?
You did, and I felt a little bit sick already. It's just so
First
wrong.
time ever.
Yeah.
I felt so modern. It was brilliant. But the point is, I'm sure there is a point. The point is that with these garments, there are certain features you want to look out for
Yep.
in order for them to be effective on the water. So, of course, taped seams is one,
Yep.
isn't it?
Should we actually pull something out so we can
Let's
actually
do that.
show that the people who are watching? I appreciate not everybody is, but so that is very lightweight, but you can see you've got taped seams in there. So where it's been stitched together, they glue an extra, or sometimes weld an extra seam layer over the seam, just to make sure that no water will actually seep through where the stitching is, because that's always going to be a weak point.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at the kind of slightly fibrous nature of the fabric, I mean, the idea behind these is to be breathable as well as waterproof. So it's basically you've got loads of micropores, tiny little things that are too small for liquid water to penetrate, but they're large enough for sweat vapor, perspiration to escape. And that's the idea, isn't it? Because if you trap your sweat inside a garment,
There's been
it
a
dries
lot of
and
talk about
condenses.
sweat. Are you a very sweaty bloke, Alex?
I'm an active man.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Hugo, even on a power boat. So that's taped seams, kind of necessary.
Important, makes all the difference.
Storm flaps on
Steady on.
zips.
What's that? Storm. Okay.
It's on, yeah. Yeah, again,
I can-
to stop the wind and the water penetrating.
Let me pull one of these out. So you've got your zip coming down the middle, nice and tight, but when you've zipped it, you've then got an extra flap that goes over the top of the zip. That means if the water is hitting you on your chest, it runs down without getting through to the zip itself. So that is what we call a storm flap. Is that right? Do you agree?
I do agree. Yeah, yeah. Like I say, there's a lot of buzzwords. It can be quite tough to keep
Yeah.
up, can't it, with the builders of this kit. But obviously, for me, I want a degree of adjustability. So I need the cuffs that close pretty tight. I want an adjustable hood, an adjustable neck. And actually on the lining around the collar, you need kind of a felt sort of a soft touch sort of fabric, don't you? Because it starts to rub, particularly in a saltwater environment, doesn't it? And sort of hurt your neck, make little welts around here.
The only downside of that, because I agree with you on the whole cuffs thing, like these ones here, you've got little Velcro tabs. But what I do find is if you have too many Velcro bits, you find bits sticking to the wrong bit of the coat. Yeah. So if you're walking along, you suddenly find your armour's stuck to the storm flap. And I'm not sure, do you like these little rubberized arm sections within? Do you have some of those?
I do. I love these. I've got some of these, and it's significantly tighter than that. So when you slot it on, you just feel prepped and ready. You feel nothing's getting through there.
So it's kind of almost like a little wetsuit.
Yeah, it is. You know those little gaskets? Gussets?
I don't know what we're talking about. Gaskets.
Those little rubber linings.
Definitely quite a big difference between a gasket and a gusset. Don't get those wrong.
No, when people go skiing, I don't do much skiing. I know you do for a fact. So sometimes, or snowboarding, you have those little bits under here, the rubbery bits that stop the snow flooding up. And
I don't know what that's called.
Well, it's the same principle,
Okay,
isn't it?
I'll
And
go with it. Okay.
I love those.
So it stops water getting up either your waist or your wrist.
Exactly. But one thing I do want to talk about is the fit of a lot of this stuff. Now, when you're buying a wetsuit or a dry suit, that has to fit really, really well to be effective. You often find that in small fit, you'll get a tall version, small tool or medium tool, which is, as you can see, I'm a relatively rangy sort of fellow. I've got quite long arms, long legs.
A lanky bastard is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But quite a small body. So if I'm getting a small size, it's halfway up my arms and halfway up my shins. If I'm getting medium, it feels like I'm wearing my dad's gear. So
you want the sort of skinny jeans equivalent of a wet weather.
I knew you were going to mock my jeans. I bought these on Vinted and they turned up and it's like I painted them on. It's like I'm wearing jeggings and everyone's trying to take the piss. Even my missus, my kids take the piss.
Well, I think that's reasonable because we've moved away. That was so last year, the skinny jeans.
Yeah, it was.
They're now massive, great, flary things again.
Well, look, I can only afford £12 for a pair of jeans and this happened to hit the budget. So what I want to say about sizing, now that you've embarrassed me publicly, is that you need a degree of adjustability, and you get that with the salopettes in shoulders. You often get that around the waist.
Are you a
of your
salopette
jacket.
man rather than a trousers?
I am.
Are you? I just don't like a salopette. There's something a bit weird about having things over your shoulder. It sort of reminds me of, I don't know, 1930s sort of wearing braces, and it's all a bit weird. I just wear a trouser, again, because the kind of boating I do, I don't really need to have my nipples covered by an extra layer.
Right, yeah.
You know, I'm wearing a jacket. The jacket comes down to my thighs. My trousers come up above my waist. We've got a foot of double layer there. I mean, just don't need to be up here.
You've got to have an overlap. You know, I layer up. I wore about 3 jackets here this morning. I feel the cold, Hugo.
Well, it's because you're so skinny.
Yeah,
put a few pounds on, you'll be all right.
Athletic is what I am.
Athletic is the term.
Yeah,
all right.
svelte.
All right. Okay.
So there are a couple of brands that kind of work for me because I feel like almost all the gear you buy, without wishing to be too offensive, is kind of built for big fat blokes.
All right.
And I
not in the
suspect-
least offensive.
And I'm not a big fat bloke, okay? I'm, like I say, svelte,
Yeah.
athletic. I wouldn't say that fits me. And a couple of brands that do kind of work there are Sail Racing gear, which I like a lot.
Sail Racing is a nice brand.
It's lovely,
Very
it's
stylish.
expensive,
Yeah.
but that's got a sort of slightly more cut sort of figure without actually minimising your flexibility. And I've always called them Zeke. How do you pronounce
Well, I
it?
think it's Zyke. I never quite know. I mean, they shouldn't have such a silly name, really, should they?
No, they shouldn't. But Zyke, that's good kit. That feels quite youthful. It
Shall
feels
we
as though
show
it's
off a
built for
couple of bits?
relatively
I
young
think we've got
people.
a few of those.
Incidentally, even though I've said I like salopettes, look, this is some non-marine specific gear when I just need to cover up my trousers.
Perfectly sensible trouser.
Yeah,
That's all
North
you need.
Face,
Yeah.
right? So you don't necessarily have to spend a
Waterproof
fortune
is
on this
waterproof.
stuff.
It doesn't. Yeah, there's no
It
difference
is.
between seawater and any other kind of water.
And it
It's a
turns
bit
out-
saltier, but you're about to lose one of your cushions there as well.
All right, I'm causing carnage, Hugo.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't have put you on the spot there.
Well, I haven't even got space to model it, have I? So that was utterly
You
pointless.
don't have to put it on, but you can still show it
Well, I
off.
wanted to show how it's relatively narrow cut, and it's good kit. I think what
Yeah.
we got here, the Inshore 200. There's an Inshore 100 as well, which is slightly lighter weight.
My wife has got exactly the same, obviously, than the ladies' cut, but she's a big fan of it again because it's just slightly fitted.
Yeah.
She's got the lighter grey one, but it looks a little bit more youthful. It's nice and light. It's sort of flexible. You know, some of them are quite crispy, I call it.
I know what you
And
mean.
You make a bit of a noise when you walk around because it's
Yeah.
all a bit rigid and scratchy.
Yeah, this is good kit. It's kind of, it feels a little bit more casual and high street as well. You're not labelling yourself as a yachty necessarily when you wear that gear, are you?
No, but I think those in the know will recognise it.
Yeah.
But can I counter with a couple of pieces?
Yeah,
'Cause
go on.
the brand that I'm always amazed what good value they offer, and that is a company called Lomo, based in Scotland, and they just do a really good no-nonsense piece of kit. I've got a wetsuit from them, and I've got one of their sailing jackets. This is the Lomo Coriolis, it's called, and it's got all the features that you'd expect. You've got your storm flaps, you've got your taped seams, you've got a really nice built-in hood in there. You've got the reflective bits, got nice little detailing, waterproof zip, so you can stick your phone in there or whatever. And this is £149.
It's amazing,
So it's got
isn't it?
all the features.
Can I just
And I
point
can
out
show you-
that before you move on,
Yeah, go on
that
then.
our camera lady fell asleep then? Genuinely,
To me?
she actually fell asleep over there.
To be fair, we are quite boring.
Yeah, no, but I'm not even going to stop. I'm going to carry on because we're on a roll here, aren't we? Everybody's just, is this a bad sign? I don't know.
Well, Maybe we just put her at ease. Maybe that's a good thing.
That might be what it is.
But this is a really quality piece of kit. This is a full Musto BR3, really nice offshore kit. And it is, it's a nicer bit of kit, don't get me wrong. And it will probably last a bit longer. It's very comfortable. It's very breathable. But it is the best part of 500 quid.
Yeah, it's a decent bit of cash.
So it is.
But I can match you for that. Now, this just got sent to me last week, and I've had a good play with this. This is beautiful quality. This is a similar kind of price. I think this is the dynamic range, Henry Lloyd calls it. Again, taped seams. Really high quality gear, this. Lots of adjustability, so I can kind of, even though it's slightly oversized, I can kind of tailor it to my body shape. It's fantastically comfortable. And I've had a little prance about in it, just to test that breathability. And even though it seems that it would more on the side of waterproofing than breathability, it does a pretty good job in that regard as well. And it comes with, of course, the matching salopettes. And actually, while we're talking, you mentioned your wife. If you're buying Fowleys as a woman, you do need to buy the women's specific
It
sizing.
makes a difference because
you get the shorter arms and the wider hip.
Shorter arms, slightly more fitted,
a
little bit more room up top usually,
and
they just look more stylish if they're fitted.
Yeah, then quite often they'll come with a kind of drop down panel in the seat.
Understandable. I can see that might be handy.
Exactly.
Now, one other thing to comment, because I think we have slightly different opinions about this: layering.
Yeah.
Now, do you go for the lightweight jacket and layer up, or do you go for a heavy duty insulated?
Always, and don't listen to Hugo on this, listen to me exclusively. Always go for a lightweight layer that is waterproof, that provides no thermal integrity, and layer up and down underneath as you see fit. All right? Much more versatile, much more effective.
But it means you have to have sort of 3 or 4 items of clothing rather than one. Because I am of the opinion that I get it, it works, it gives you versatility, but most of the time around the house or inside the boat, I'm just in a t-shirt or a polo shirt. When I am cold, I don't want to put on 3 different layers. I want to put on one layer that has some insulation, is also waterproof, does all the jobs in one piece of clothing. I don't want to pack 3 pieces of clothing when one will do.
Well, that's lazy. That's the work of an amateur. Right? Hugo, honestly, it's absurd. Everyone knows I'm completely right about this.
I'm just not convinced. Yes, and I do. To be honest, the jacket I wear more than anything, weirdly, is this very lightweight Musto LPX. And when I first got it, and it was about 400 quid, I thought, that just does not look like 400 quid's worth.
Yeah.
But the fact that it is so light and so waterproof and so compact, I just stuff it into everything. Wherever I'm going, even if I'm going to the Mediterranean to test a boat, I stick it in because sometimes it gets a bit choppy or you get a rain shower and it just does the job. But the whole thing scrumples up into a tiny little ball, stuff it in the corner of your rucksack, job done. But in the winter, when I'm at home, I don't want to have 4 different layers. I want one jacket, proper insulation on it, slip it on, job done.
Well, you carry on with your way of doing things. All I'm saying is that you got to essentially on the water, and the conditions change inside, outside. This country conditions change inside 10 minutes. You can have all 4 seasons in a day. You've got to be quite fastidious about arranging your clothes to suit the conditions, and then you stay properly comfortable. You stay properly dry. And maybe it's because I was in the military like ages ago.
You've got some very strange habits that you've picked up from the military, and you just can't shake them.
Well, that's the best of them. And the fact that I'm never late, that's quite good as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, on time is about half an hour early for you, isn't it?
It is, yeah, about 5 hours early this morning. Yeah. But before we move on from Fowleys, because we've done these to death.
Yeah, we have.
One thing I miss on modern Fowleys, you used to get on trousers and sometimes on the forearm is a transparent panel. You used to get one in your thigh. It's transparent panel just here. Yeah, not so you can just look at my thighs.
Well, show off your tattoos.
No, that's right. No, not so you can show off how muscular your thighs are. It's so that you can slot your nav notes in there, man.
I had a very strange vision of you there. I want to show off my manly thighs.
Yeah, well, I do, but also for your nav notes because I know people don't tend to use paper charts anymore.
Does it not just all sort of steam up and you can't really see anything? And
no, I use those always, and it's still really effective. Just a simple. I should have had it for this podcast, shouldn't I? I can be much more efficient. Just go from step to step without waffling.
So
I
what
might
do
do
you
that
normally
next
have? Sort
time.
of turn left at the tree and shoot the bad guy. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of thing. You don't take me seriously, Hugo. I make a brilliant point and you just mock me. At least the camera lady's woken up anyway. So finally, before we move on,
Yep.
I'd just like to mention a couple of kind of commercial brands because there are alternatives. This is brilliant kit, all right? And if you can afford it, great. It looks the part and it functions great. But there's a company called Mullion and a company called, it's either Fladen or Fladen. I guess it depends where it's from. But they
Rings a
make
bell.
kind of all-in-one, kind of onesies for grown-ups, like waterproof clothing with built-in buoyancy. And these things, you can get one of these onesie suits and they do relatively leisure biased things as well that are slightly less waterproof, slightly more breathable. But they'll cost you about 160, 180 quid upwards. But
do you end up looking like a fisherman or a toddler or something?
I think you look cool, action man ready. I've seen a few professional skippers when I've been out on boat tests, sort of looking mockingly at my expensive fowlies from these posh brands. So I've questioned them about their gear, which looks like they're all set for a day on the oil rigs or, as a river taxi. And they've told me these are the brands and you can get some brilliant kit from them.
Yeah, what happens when you turn up at the pub bar or go shopping in Aldi and you're wearing a dry suit, effectively?
You still look like a hero, don't you?
Do you?
You
Yeah,
do. But
yeah.
you can get separate
There's another
jackets
term
and
for that.
trousers.
It rhymes with banker. But,
Yeah. Wow, Hugo,
Well-
we're ramping it up.
I didn't say it. I just said it
Give me
rhymes
the
with
brief
it.
before we begin. I'll join you.
Go
All
on
right,
then.
more of that in the next section. That is Fowlies fully done. We'd love to hear your feedback. In the meantime, we're going to move on to item 3. Well, it's supposed to be an issue, isn't it? So it's powered water sports. And I kind of came up with this issue because I look at water sports equipment like stand-up paddleboards and I think, why would you spoil the vibe by adding propulsion to that? An electric battery, an electric motor.
How can that be a bad thing?
Well, I might sound a little bit extreme and edgy here. I don't mean to, all right? But the fact of the matter is that we live in a nation beset by obesity.
It's going, it's going really rant now.
Okay, and what I'm saying is that even if you happen to be a big chunky fella who's a little bit out of shape, you'll use the government's legislation to get yourself some free jabs, and then you don't even have to take any.
Where are you going?
You take no. I'm getting to a point. You take no responsibility for your diet or your physical regime, which I think is quite negative. So on the face of it, originally, I must just stress, I don't necessarily inhabit this position anymore. But originally, I'd look at these bikes with their electric motors and this sizable mountain of a man on top and think, why don't you just pedal? How much good do you think this is doing you? But then, Hugo, then I went out on my stand-up paddleboard on the River Deben from Woodbridge in Suffolk, all the way down to Old Felixstowe. I mean, even if you go straight, that's a 15-mile bloody paddleboard.
And presumably you're going with the flow.
Well, yeah, I was supposed to be, but we kind of cocked up our tide times a little bit. So towards the end of it, when I'd zigzag down this river, and the other guys were on kayaks, by the way, so they were cheating. The tide turned. The wind was a bit messy. I was exhausted. I'd already been like hitting the deck just to try to get myself low, just to reduce my windage. I was in all sorts of agony, and I stopped moving, even though I was working my arse off to go forward after these kayaks were disappearing. And eventually, quite exhausted, I felt like a shipwreck victim getting swept off on some driftwood, and I thought this.
You were about to become a statistic.
Yeah, I was like, this is not what I was thinking when I bought this stand-up paddleboard.
Can you now get electric motors for paddleboards? Is this what you're leading to eventually?
Exactly that. How's that for an intro?
Well, apart from insulting about half of the UK population.
Yeah, I know, it is. But this is what has led me to the conclusion that actually, because I borrowed a sipper board, which are brilliant little bits of kit. Now, my paddleboard was about 400 quid, so not a lot. These things cost between sort of 1,500 and €3,000. 3,000 euros, I should say.
It's got a built-in electric motor and a battery in.
Yeah, exactly that. And it can run for 7 hours if you take the optional battery
Where
upgrade.
are you going to on your paddleboard in 7 hours?
Well, bloody Old Felixstowe from Woodbridge. Who knew? And it's superb because essentially what it does, it's not cheating exactly. It just enables you to visit places that your natural physical ability would prevent you from visiting. So you can actually go further afield in the same way as these big lads on their electric bikes might not have been out on a bike at all if it weren't for the fact that they had this electrical propulsion. So actually it's a really positive thing.
Can we move on
to the good side?
Different in terms of actual really cool electric water sports kit? Because there are two bits of kit that, well, I think every decent big motor yacht should have.
Yeah.
One is the Sea Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Great fun.
Yeah.
Basically powered, it's like a water scooter. You hold it out in front of you and it drags you along. But it'll take you underwater, it'll take you on the surface, and it basically makes you into kind of Superman. Was there a sort of Aquaman or something? But where you can go along at about probably 10 or 12 miles an hour, I'd say. They're surprisingly quick. And they drag you underwater, you can pop up, and they're incredibly easy to use. The great thing about them, you can just give it to anybody who's on board the boat, whether they're a sort of 10-year-old kid or a 70-year-old man. You can be dragged around by one of these things. Great fun. But my personal favourite, and I would dearly love to have one of these, is one of these electric foil boards. So you've seen foiling probably on the Olympics or on a sailing boat or on these America's Cup things. It's basically a surfboard with a big foil underneath it, a electric jet or propeller on the bottom of the foil, and some kind of remote control hand controller. And you start off lying on it, you then kneel on it, and then you can then stand up on it, and you basically fly over the waves on this very cool electric e-foil. And it is the most amazing sensation.
With a handheld controller?
So you have a handheld controller, and you up above the waves. You're probably about a foot, 2 feet above the waves, maybe maximum. But it is so quiet. It's so effortless. It's really something really elegant about it, because you sort of carve around beautifully. And I see it a lot. I go down to Sandbanks Pool quite a lot, and there's a few people out there, and you see them out first thing in the morning. They're just sort of carving around the bay, totally silently, and it's just an amazing feeling, because all the sort of noise drops off. You don't even get any hull slap, and you're up above the waves, and you can look down. So it's all the sort of nice things about paddleboarding in terms of quiet and standing and looking through the water and sort of being at one with nature. But you can do it sort of 20, 30 miles an hour. It's incredible.
Is it easily enough done?
It's just the right level of difficult, I would say. I've probably had 2 or 3 sessions, and in the first session you can get going reasonably confidently on your knees. Second session you'll be able to get up standing, but a bit wobbly. Third, you're a bit more confident. But what's nice about it is that there's a challenge. It feels like it's a skill that you can carry on acquiring for months and months. Whereas you get on a jet ski, the first 15 minutes, wow, this is amazing, it's brilliant. And then, well, I've done that, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And whilst we're on the subject of jet skis, I mean, they are quite annoying, aren't they?
Yeah.
If you're anchored up in a nice, peaceful bay and I won't go there, starts racing around the bay on a noisy, dangerous, fast bit of kit, I get they're fun, but just go miles away. They're so quick.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, I mean...
no, go on.
I'm going to carry on.
It's your turn to have a rant, isn't it?
I just cannot get over how powerful these things are.
Oh, they're
so
outrageous.
my boat, 22-foot boat, or any of these big exports, I've got a single 200 horsepower engine on. Now, that is a big engine on a 22-foot boat. It'll do 40 knots. You can get, on a jet ski, 350 horsepower. That's basically like sitting on a 350 horsepower outboard.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at like 70 knots in a second.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I just cannot get over how quick and these things are.
I went on just maybe 7 or 8, maybe more than that, 10 years ago now, but similarly powerful skis. It was a Sea-Doo trip, a Sea-Doo safari in the archipelagos of Finland. And they had all the equipment there. And my favourite one for usability, because power's great, right? The grunt's fantastic. But when you get a few ripples and you see the top of that dash coming up towards, you're like, I need to back right off here. There was one ski there by Sea-Doo with what they called intelligent suspension, where the whole unit was... I don't know if it was hinged. It was certainly a suspension unit that separated it from the deck.
Seat and the hull.
Yeah,
That's
so
clever.
the deck would come up and down, and you'd be still. And I had just had a double hernia operation when I went out to try that. So that was my ski of choice, and it was fantastic because while all these young lads on their super powerful skis were having to throttle off a bit, I was just cruising straight through them, through the chop, thinking this is a much more practical ski because you can go further afield. You can actually disappear from the bays and, you know, do the odd passage and survive it. But they discontinued that in 2017 because it was expensive and it was quite tough to work on the engine because of the nature of that. So it's a great shame.
I'll tell you what I did see though at Dusseldorf this year, and that's the first electric jet ski, which I thought was quite clever because that removes obviously my objection about them being noisy idiots. Yeah. And it was so light. I think the battery, you could take the battery out. I think that was about sort of 29 kilos.
Yeah, and the ski itself 55, so 84 in all. So it's the weight of a man.
No, but I think isn't that 55 with the battery or is that without the battery? Either way, two people could easily lift it, no problem at all.
Yeah, they were saying you could actually stick it on the roof of your car and do away with your trailer.
Exactly.
Makes a difference. That,
so, or stick it on the bathing platform of your boat and you're not dragging around sort of 500 kilos with you. You've got a really light, quite fun, not quite as quick, but I think it does 30 knots. Yeah. Which again is probably fast enough for most people just to have a bit of a play.
Yeah, maximum range of about 15 miles. But as you say,
but do you want to do
it's about a play. It's about floating about, having a little
none of these things are for doing distance. They're for once you get to a bay, you want something to entertain yourself or your guests, and you want to go out on a paddleboard or a jet ski or a foil board.
Yeah, well, you know my problem with this thing, and I suspect I'd have the same problem with a couple of the gadgets you've already mentioned, is price. Yeah. Because they're looking at €18,000 plus VAT, which is almost 3 times as much as you would pay for a Sea-Doo Spark.
Yeah, and they're a nice thing. The Sea-Doo Sparks, I mean, you can't really go wrong with one of them.
Yeah, I mean, when they came out, they were sub £5,000, weren't they? Which is, at a show, kind of pocket change for some of these people. You're just like, why not? Get the family out and you can customise them, so you've each got your own colourways. It's quite an exciting ski, wasn't it? I think them close to sort of
and they
seven,
look sort of a little bit sort of knockabout, don't they? They're made out of slightly different material. They are. A sort of ABS plastic or something that doesn't mark so easily.
That's right. And they kind of arranged the structure of it in a sort of skeletal form, didn't they? Just to minimise weight and to make it look different. And it really did do that.
Because those sea bobs are heavy things too. Oh my God.
Well, the new one's come out, hasn't it?
It is.
So the old one, the F5, that was like 34 kilos. The new one is 20 to 24 kilos, isn't it? So you really just chuck that
tried to lift one of those single-handed onto a bathing platform. I mean, they are heavy things. Yeah. So I want to have a go on that new one actually, because what's the new one? It's the F9.
It's called the F9.
That's sort of 22 kilos or something, is it?
Yeah, it depends on the spec because you can add again a bit of battery capacity either for extra range or because there's is it the S version of the F9 is a bit more powerful, so you want a bit more pace. But not only is it lighter, it's also smaller than the F5, so it's easier to stow. You can just stick it in your boot, and if you happen to come across a lake or a beach, you can just get out and have a play with that. So it's not just for your boat. So that's really good kit.
Yeah, clever bit of kit. Look forward to trying that.
Is there anything we've missed? Because
I don't think so. I mean, I'm a big paddleboard fan. I've never tried the electric one, but no, for me, it's all about the foil boards and the sea bobs. If you're going to get an electric water toy, I think those look great fun. But you should, by any default, also have a couple of paddle boards.
What kind of money are you paying for one of those foil boards?
So you can start, there's a very nice one called a Flightboard Air, which I think is about £7,000 or euros, can't quite remember. And the nice thing about them is because it's like an inflatable deck, A, they're a bit more buoyant, so they're easier, a bit more stable. And B, it means they're just softer to have around a boat, because one of the dangers, if you have a heavy carbon fibre thing, it's quite easy to clonk it around on the bathing platform and take a chunk of teak or knock the gel coat off. So I think that's a really sensible piece of kit to have on a boat, inflatable deck. So I think there are probably some cheaper Chinese knockoffs now, but I think Flightboard are a really decent brand, and the Air Deck one is the way to go. You can also get handlebars for one of them, which is quite clever. So if you're struggling with your whole balance, you can get something called a Flight Scooter, made by the same company, where you stand on it, but you have handlebars, so you've got something to sort of balance yourself on, and it just makes it a bit easier if you're not a natural surfer or whatever. It just gives you a bit more control. So I think that's quite a clever.
Yeah, handlebars of shame. Would you actually commit to those?
But in theory, once you get the hang of it, you can take the handlebars off, and then you can start to look cool. So that's all right.
Okay. Yeah,
so you can learn it more quickly, but not look like too much of a numpty once you've taken them off and you've got the hang of it.
Okay, so we began with me spitting me vitriol about how it was completely unnecessary for people to power things that didn't need powering. And the conclusion is weirdly harmonious. Power everything. It's brilliant.
Certainly.
Is that the answer?
Get your exercise somewhere else.
Brilliant. There you have it. That is the end of this week's podcast. We have been, who have we been? We haven't been Boat Geeks, have we? We've been
The Boat Nuts.
Nuts.
Absolutely.
We sincerely hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any feedback to leave, please don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear more from us, then please do subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.
Brilliant. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.